What's going on, y'all? Today we got Redick needs a reality check by Basketball Time Machine. Let's get into it, y'all. Let me skip the intro.
This is on fire with his media.
Oh, this is not by Basketball Time Machine. I'm chatting. Hold on. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. It's not by Basketball Time Machine. It's by Johnny Averett. My fault. Word. This makes sound like a Basketball Time Machine intro though. My fault, y'all. Links in the description, man. Link to the original video in the description.
Redick has been a huge gift to the mainstream media lately, as the former player has been setting basketball circles on fire with his many controversial takes. I debated whether or not I should make a video about some of JJ's comments, and for a while, I didn't think I was going to, simply because it's just one man's opinion. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that JJ is kind of becoming the face of many critical modern NBA fans. He's famously referred to pros from previous generations as plumbers and firemen, and he's a guy who's ready and willing to take shots at previous generations. Recently, NBA greats like Dominique Wilkins and Michael Cooper took offense to some of his comments, as they sent back some heated remarks. Now, I really don't have a problem with some modern players occasionally throwing some shade at past legends, because, to be honest, a lot of former players have been doing that to current players for a while now. Basically, don't dish it if you can't take it. To be honest, I don't care so much about the whole...
I mean, that's your elders though, man. That's what they supposed to do. They supposed to critique you, want you to be better. That's your elders, man. You gotta,
It's disrespectful angle either way, because people getting their feelings hurt doesn't dictate whether or not it's actually true. All I care about is whether or not JJ is actually right, and on this, I believe he's horribly wrong, for the most part. For those of you still wondering what JJ said to make people so upset, take a listen.
Bird is one of the great shooters in the history of the sport, not even close.
Bird shot threes. He never was a volume shooter.
No, I know that, but he was a great three-point shooter. He was not good. He was great. He's one of the top 5 three-point shooters of all time. That's how good Bird is. Oh, yes.
We're not
three-point shooting contests. He was phenomenal. Bird's a great shooter.
Wait a minute,
and Bird didn't shoot.
Bird is absolutely one of the greatest shooters ever, but he's not one of the top 5 three-pointers, top 3, whatever you just said.
Did you see the three-point shooting that he put on, those clinics that he put on at the All-Star game?
Again,
did you watch?
Doggy, it's just math. It's attempts, it's makes, and it's percentage. And there's no way you could ever argue Larry Bird is a top 3 three-point shooter of all time. You can't make that argument.
You're basing it on math. You're basing it on math in a time of when he played. I'm basing it on just shooting. Bird is a unbelievable.
Again, we had this discussion the other day. About James Naismith. James Naismith invented the game. You were rewarded for putting the ball in the basket. There's plenty of people that have shot more, made more, and guess what? Made more at a higher percentage than Larry Bird from 3. I'm not saying Larry Bird is not one of the greatest shooters ever. He's not one of the greatest three-point shooters ever.
Yes,
you cannot make that argument.
Yes, I'm sorry. Because the 80s is so much different. There's physicality, the way they guarded people. You couldn't.
Can we get
Doggy, I've been trying to make a point.
Seriously,
I've been trying to make a point for you, Doggy.
Come on, man.
I've been trying to
First off, I'm not vibing with Mr. Super Celtic fan over here either, who seems to overly inflate every Celtics great who's ever played, whether it be Larry Bird, Bob Cousy, or whoever. But back to the point. In that clip you just witnessed, JJ criticizes Larry Bird's shooting prowess. He attempted to discredit great shooters from previous generations, and he challenged the legitimacy of that physical era. Let me first start by tackling his mockery of the physicality narrative. In numerous interviews on ESPN and on
hold on, I'm bugging out. I don't understand that part, I understand what he's saying about the three-point shooting and things like that. I understand that. I don't know what he's talking about. No.
Podcast,
you don't got that. Y'all
Redick has tried to make the point that the physicality of the game was not that different back then compared to today's game. I'll start by saying this. When Larry Bird played in the 80s, the flagrant foul did not exist yet in the NBA.
You see that? It was really hacking, bro.
Played in the 80s, the flagrant foul did not exist yet in the NBA. That alone should tell you that players back then were able to get away with things that they can't get away with today. I mentioned this recently in my YouTube short. But Bill Laimbeer is seen by many people as the dirtiest player of all time, yet he has the 5th longest streak of games played in NBA history with a total of 685. He did this to Larry Bird and was never suspended. He also did this, and this, yet was never suspended or even ejected. And again, those are the things that he just did to Larry Bird. On top of the fact that you could just clobber guys, the defensive 3-second violation wasn't introduced to the NBA until the early 2000s, which means that throughout the 80s, big men could simply camp under the basket and cause physical punishment to any player who tried to drive the lane. Not only is the flagrant foul now limiting that physicality, but now centers and power forwards are often away from the paint due to the 3-second violation, which equals more contact-free layups and dunks. The league is simply not like it used to be in terms of its physically punishing style. And honestly, I would hear someone out if they said that that was actually a good thing. But come on, JJ, let's not act like the league hasn't drastically changed from its physically punishing ways. Not every game was an absolute bloodbath in the 80s, and if some older gentleman told you that, well, he was lying. It often depended on which teams were involved, and if the teams wanted to set a physical tone for the game. For example, the Showtime Lakers hated playing that way, as their roster preferred more finesse and a quicker style of play. The thing is, when they ran into the Celtics and Pistons, they often didn't have a choice, as those teams wanted to establish a more physical game, and back then, they could do that. Now the other thing JJ talked about was 3-point shooting, saying that Larry wasn't a top 5 3-point shooter of all time. And honestly, that's actually a decent take, because it's pretty darn stacked at the top of the list, with guys like Steph Curry, Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, Klay Thompson, Damian Lillard, Craig Hodges, and so on. But going as far as saying that Larry isn't one of the greatest 3-point shooters ever is just simply ludicrous. As far as I'm concerned, Larry is in the top 10, 15, or 20. Any one of those spots would qualify him as one of the greatest shooters of all time. He's tied for the most 3-point competitions won in NBA history, and when adjusted for the changes in the rules, his final rounds are pretty similar to the recent final rounds in NBA 3-point contest history.
Doggy, it's just math. It's attempts, it's makes, and it's percentage.
JJ's comments seem to suggest that Larry wasn't a very efficient 3-point shooter, but that's not even the case. For his career, Larry shot 37.6% from 3-point distance, which is an even greater percentage than Damian Lillard's, who now many people are putting in the conversation of the greatest shooters of all time. Larry was also much better from 3-point range in the second half of his career over the first. The reason for this is because Larry's rookie season in the NBA was also the year the league introduced the 3-point shot, which was 1979. This means that Bird wasn't practicing the 3-ball throughout his years in high school and college. Instead, he literally developed his 3-point shot during his years in the NBA, and he hadn't mastered it until the
context
mid-80s.
is very important, man. Context is very important. That means he's one of the pioneers of the 3-point shot. You know? One of the people that made the 3-point shot great. How can he not be one of the greatest 3-point shooters
which
of all time?
drastically affected
Maybe not
his
top
career
5,
percentages. On
definitely
top of
top
that,
10,
Bird was
top
an even
15,
better shooter
like bro
when it
was
mattered
saying,
the
yeah.
most,
That's
as he
a
shot
fact.
42.2% from 3-point range over his career in the NBA Finals. That finals percentage is greater than the finals efficiency of both Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But one of JJ's biggest angles was the topic of volume.
It's attempts, it's makes, and it's percentage.
I'm gonna be frank. This is an absurd criticism to make against Bird, and it literally unfairly critiques every player before the 2010s.
Nah,
JJ
for real.
basically states
that basically
that
basically means no one before the 2010s have a chance. Basically, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, you look at it like that, like the 2010s is a 3-point era. I mean, after the 2010s, like that is when the 3-point shooters just came, you know, started wilding. But it's like, you still got to give the credit where it's due, man. They dominated the 3-point shot in their era, bro. Like, you see what I'm saying?
to shoot a relatively high volume of threes compared to today's game. The problem is, based on that logic, no one who played outside of the last 5 seasons of NBA history has an argument for being one of the greatest three-point shooters ever. 76 years of NBA history, but apparently only the last 5 count. That is insanely biased and short-sighted. Of course, shooters like Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, and Ray Allen would love to play in this modern NBA where more three-pointers are attempted. And holding the fact that they didn't against them is simply an absurd standard. Also, saying that Bird wasn't a volume shooter is a claim that you can only make if you're comparing him to modern basketball, because back in his era, he was a volume three-point shooter. For 6 straight seasons, Bird finished in the top 10 spots for the most three-point attempts per game. And in back-to-back seasons, he finished in the #1 spot for three-pointers attempted per game. In those 2 seasons, Bird shot 42.3% and 40% from distance. Larry Bird was one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time, and the game was more physical in the 80s. Now I already know what's coming. For those of you saying, I'll listen to the NBA player instead of the YouTuber. Well, that point is irrelevant, because there are many other NBA players who disagree with Redick. So just because he's the pro doesn't automatically give him the correct opinion. And by that same logic,
a lot of times these pros don't be knowing what the fuck they talking about. Or basketball players is a lot of times dumb. Wasn't really paying attention in school. Probably a lot of times the best players be getting the worst grades. You know, worst grades on the team. Always, you know what I'm saying, always in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Shit like that. Like, he wasn't worried about no school. You know what I'm saying? Now they analysts and shit. It's over. Niggas just chatting. You know, they saying whatever gonna get them to check for real. You know, it is what it is though. I respect it. Get your money.
I can't give a valid opinion on NBA players because I never was one. Then JJ Redick can't give a valid opinion on NBA superstars because he never was one.
Sheesh. Sheesh. Hit him with some, you know what I'm saying? But if y'all enjoyed this one, man, let me know in the comments. Make sure you share the video, turn on post notifications, subscribe if you're new. Make sure you click on the last reaction though, man. Good for your health. What was that one about? I can't even remember. You're gonna have to find out right there. It's on your screen right now. You know what it is, my brothers and sisters. I'm out here.